My girlfriend and her childhood sweetheart registered their marriage, and even posted their wedding photos publicly on WeChat. Yet instead of feeling the slightest anger, I quietly gave it a like. Only because from the moment I was a fetus until now, after 28 years living in this other world, I've finally realized this world is crazier than anything I could have imagined. I've seen childhood sweethearts who stayed together for more than 20 years. Yet after marriage, the woman kept a pure-hearted college boy as her secret lover, and the man's response was silently starting a terminal illness countdown. I've seen a beautiful influencer who had been in a 7-year relationship cheat on her boyfriend with her boss, and after she was dumped while pregnant, her boyfriend still gladly stepped in and took responsibility. I've seen a miserable man discover that his daughter wasn't biologically his. Yet because the woman ran away, he still devoted himself wholeheartedly to raising the child. After witnessing so many fake-hearted human incidents like these, I became certain that the world I transmigrated into is actually a gigantic female protagonist romance universe, especially when one day, my girlfriend suddenly brought home that fragile, helpless childhood sweetheart of hers. The last bit of hope in my heart finally died. Chapter 1. Ding ding ding. I hadn't even closed the screen where I had just liked Willow's WeChat post when her call came in. Her tone carried a hint of urgency. George, Makoto has been diagnosed with a terminal illness. The doctor said he has at most 3 months left. His biggest wish in life is to get married just once. I just pity him, and I want to help him fulfill that wish. Please don't overthink it. Okay. Only after she finished speaking did I respond unhurriedly, my voice gentle enough to be molded between fingers. I understand, Willow. I've always known, you've always been a kind-hearted girl. The other end of the line paused. Willow sounded incredulous. You're not angry. I shifted my tone, letting the ending soften into a mix of grievance and teasing, mimicking the way she usually coaxed me. I wouldn't say I'm angry, but saying I'm not jealous would be a lie. So tonight you have to come keep me company and make me feel better. You won't disappoint me, right? After a short silence, Willow's voice returned, lighter, as if relieved. Of course, George. Don't overthink it. I'll definitely come over tonight. Hanging up, I felt a spark of satisfaction. As a devoted admirer of Napoleon, I've always had quite an interest in mature married women. It's just that my refined moral standards never allowed me to do something like interfering in someone else's marriage. Who would have thought my cool, goddess-like girlfriend would be the one to break that boundary for me first? This surprise really caught me off guard. For tonight's program, and for my kind-hearted girlfriend, I decided my dinner would be charcoal-grilled oysters with stir-fried pig kidneys. Gotta keep the nutrition up. Chapter 2. Leaving the office that evening, after finishing dinner, I brought a gift and headed to the apartment Willow and I used to rent when we lived together. I had moved out a year ago. Back then, Willow was constantly being summoned by her fragile and helpless childhood sweetheart with all sorts of melodramatic excuses. Today it was a fever. Tomorrow it was shortness of breath. After too many times, arguments between us naturally became inevitable. To keep it from affecting my work, I simply bought an apartment near the company and moved out, without telling her the address. She asked a few times afterward, and I brushed it off each time. Only when work pressure occasionally became too much would I return to this rental to spend time with her. When the key turned in the lock and the door opened, I saw Willow sitting on the sofa. The warm yellow light outlined her gentle silhouette, and I couldn't stop a flicker of admiration in my eyes. People say how beautiful a woman appears depends greatly on one's personal preferences, and Willow fit perfectly into mine. She was the most beautiful woman I had seen in my 28 years of life. No exceptions. But after dating for so long, the amazement she gave me had long faded compared to the love at first sight heartbeat I felt 7 years ago. Seeing her quietly waiting for me like this reminded me of the toughest days during my startup. Willow would sit silently by my side just like this. Even if she was only playing on her phone and not actually helping, I still felt grounded. After all, I didn't need her money, just her presence. But that sense of reassurance was eventually worn away by the sight of her running again and again to her childhood sweetheart. Chapter 3. When Willow heard the sound of the lock turning, she immediately stood up and turned toward the door. George, you're back. When she saw my face clearly, a flash of delight quickly crossed her eyes. I responded softly, walked straight to her, and handed her the shopping bag in my hand. A gift for you. See if you like it. Inside was the same bunny girl outfit worn by senior sister Mai online. Willow reached in and pulled it out. The delight on her face instantly faded, replaced by a barely noticeable disappointment. She bit her lower lip lightly, hesitating, clearly searching for an excuse to refuse. Before she could speak, I stepped closer, my tone tinged with suggestion. Willow, I don't even mind you registering for a marriage license with Makoto. My gaze burned into her face, capturing every ounce of her hesitation. After more than 10 seconds of silence, Willow finally lowered her eyes and nodded. An hour later, Her cheeks were flushed unnaturally, strands of hair sticking to the side of her neck. Her voice was soft, like a feather brushing skin. "George, you haven't called me wife for a long time." I lowered my head to look at her and curved my lips into a faint, ambiguous smile. "If I call you wife now, aren't you afraid Makoto will get jealous?" "What are you talking about?" She lifted her head immediately to refute me, but her eyes dodged as she tried to explain. "He's always treated me like an older sister. He's never had any other thoughts." I sneered inwardly. "Like an older sister? An older sister he's registering a marriage license with? Speak of the devil." Right then, her phone rang on the coffee table. The name, Makoto, flickered on the screen. She answered almost on reflex. "Willow, my head hurts so much." The moment the call connected, Makoto's weak and pitiful voice came through, laced with a sobbing tone. "Could you come keep me company? I'm really scared being alone. Wait for me. I'll come right away." Willow's voice turned anxious in an instant as she started to stand up and change clothes. I moved quickly and grabbed her wrist. Chapter 4. 15 minutes later, Willow sat in the passenger seat, looking aggrieved. From time to time, she reached back to rub her sore backside. The resentment in her eyes toward me was practically overflowing. Catching a glimpse of her expression, I chuckled and teased. "I told you not to rush. You just wouldn't listen. Look, now you're hurt." Willow bit her lower lip hard. Ever since our school days, she had been known as the icy campus goddess, someone who never used foul language. All that frustration and humiliation could only turn into an exaggerated eye roll as she glared at me fiercely. When the car came to a smooth stop under Makoto's apartment building, I accompanied Willow upstairs. As soon as the door opened, Makoto was lying in bed, his face pale as a sheet of paper. "Makoto, are you all right?" Seeing his sickly complexion, Willow instantly forgot her earlier irritation. She hurried to the bedside, intending to sit down, but the moment she touched the edge of the bed, pain shot through her, and she hissed sharply before springing back up. "Willow, what happened to you?" Makoto struggled to sit up, his eyes filled with just the right amount of concern. Willow avoided meeting his gaze and gave a clumsy explanation. "No, it's nothing. I just slipped when I was coming downstairs earlier." Makoto swept his eyes over her suspiciously before finally landing his gaze on me. His tone turned harsh. "George, is this how you take care of your older sister figure? And another thing, why were you with Willow so late at night? She's my girlfriend. Isn't it perfectly natural for me to spend time with her?" Leaning against the door frame, I spoke casually. Makoto's chest tightened with anger. He almost blurted out, "She's my wife." But he swallowed the words back at the last second. He knew very well that the marriage license had been obtained through deception. If Willow learned the truth now, everything he'd staged, all his pitifulness, all his tragic acting, would instantly collapse. I glanced at my watch and spoke at a fitting moment. "I've brought her back to you. Enjoy your wedding night. I've got things to do, going now." Seeing that I was about to leave, Willow quickly stepped forward, trying to grab my hand, panic flashing in her eyes. "George, I'll take Makoto to the hospital, and then tonight I'll go home with you." "Willow." Makoto's voice trembled in panic, but Willow acted as if she didn't hear him at all, her gaze fixed intensely on me. I gently avoided her touch, my tone calm yet tinged with teasing. "No need. Willow, you did very well today. See you later." Before she could say anything else, I turned and walked away, leaving Willow frozen in place, while Makoto lay on the bed, enraged to the point his eyes turned red and his teeth nearly cracked from clenching. Watching my disappearing figure at the stairwell, Makoto clenched his fists tightly beneath the blanket. Things were completely different from what he had imagined. He originally thought that once George found out he had secretly registered a marriage license with George's girlfriend, George would explode with fury. Maybe George would even throw tens of millions at him just to make him disappear. Then Makoto could play the victim in front of Willow, claiming George had threatened him with underhanded tactics, getting money and earning Willow's sympathy. Convenient for when he ran out of money in the future and needed more. But George's utter indifference completely shattered his plan. What made him even more suffocated was this. He was the one who stole someone else's lover, yet somehow he was the one feeling betrayed. He felt like he was going insane. Chapter 5. Time moved into the next day. Today was a special day. My company was going public. To be honest, before Makoto appeared, my life had been pretty smooth sailing. I learned things quickly. Anything I touched, I mastered with ease. I suppose that counts as the golden cheat ability I got when fate favored me. Right after graduating from college, I started a business with the 1 million yuan my family invested as seed money. In 5 years, at a speed even I found hard to believe, I grew a tiny studio into a company about to ring the bell at the stock exchange. Of course, aside from my own efforts, I couldn't have achieved it without my 3 generals. They were David, whose CEO girlfriend passed her performance bonus to her assistant instead; Luis, who worked overtime so late that he fell asleep at work the next day and got fired by the chairman's daughter, and Kevin, a super workhorse assistant capable of doing the work of 10 people, who also happened to be a fake rich heir. With their help, the company's growth skyrocketed, though at some point, I noticed that the three of them started living and eating together, and the way they looked at me became strange. Every time they stared at me, I felt a prickling sensation on my back. So outside of work, I rarely interacted with them privately. At most, I gave out more bonuses. The bell-ringing ceremony at the exchange went exceptionally smoothly. As the golden hammer fell, thunderous applause erupted, accompanied by a barrage of camera flashes. I smiled calmly at the cameras, excitement swelling in my chest. To me, career was always far more captivating than romance. The moment the ceremony ended and I checked my phone, the screen was filled with missed calls. Dozens of them, all from Willow. Before I even had a chance to call back, Willow dialed again. I raised an eyebrow and answered casually, "George, your company is going public today. Why didn't you tell me?" Her voice on the other end was sharp, hysterical, nothing like the gentle woman she usually portrayed. "You clearly said before that you would stand beside me during the bell ringing, and that you'd propose to me afterward. How could you lie to me?" This was the first time I had ever heard Willow lose control like this. She sounded like a gambler who had lost all her chips. I frowned, my voice cold as ice. "Are you out of your mind? You have a husband. What proposal am I supposed to make to you?" Chapter 6. Willow was stunned into silence by my words. Only the sound of her rapid breathing came through the phone. A few seconds later, she forced her emotions down and spoke again, her voice deliberately gentle. "George, I know you're still angry about me getting the marriage license with Makoto, but don't worry. After 2 months, when he's gone, we can." I cut her off immediately, my tone filled with impatience. "That's enough. I'm not interested in hearing any of that. I still have a bunch of celebration events to arrange." I'm hanging up. Without waiting for her response, I ended the call again. Then I turned to my assistant beside me. "Show me the candidates you screened for the secretary position." The assistant handed me the tablet at once. On the screen were profiles of several recently graduated female students. The young women in the photos were vibrant, each attractive in her own way. Back when I first noticed Willow and Makoto getting ambiguous, I had already planned to break up with her. Work was busy enough, I didn't have the time or energy to constantly wonder whether she was cheating. But for some special reasons, the breakup had been delayed until now. So I simply used Makoto to provoke her a bit, unlock an achievement, so to speak. The sky gradually darkened. Just as I stepped out of the company building, I saw a familiar figure standing under the streetlight. Willow. She had changed into a deep V evening dress, the fabric tightly hugging her curves and outlining her figure perfectly. The late autumn night wind was sharp. She wasn't wearing a coat, and her shoulders trembled slightly from the cold. Even her complexion looked pale from the low temperature. I raised an eyebrow. "What are you doing here?" Willow immediately walked toward me quickly, pressing herself against my side. Her cold body clung to my arm as she said, "George, I missed you." I lowered my gaze to her nose, reddened from the cold. I didn't push her away. Instead, I nodded at the driver. "Drive to the hotel." The car moved steadily toward the hotel. I acted the gentleman and draped my suit jacket over Willow's shoulders. We remained silent the whole way. After washing up, Willow wrapped herself in a bathrobe and nestled into my arms, her fingers lightly tracing across my chest. "George, you said before that when the company went public, you would give me some shares. Do you still remember that?" Her voice was gentle and tentative, testing the waters. Her eyes clung tightly to the side of my face. Willow's family background wasn't bad. In fact, it was about the same as mine before my business succeeded. But George's recent coldness had made her feel less like a girlfriend, and more like a toy, summoned at will, dismissed at will, easily replaceable. She wanted an attitude from George. She wanted reassurance. Chapter 7. I suddenly laughed, my fingertips brushing through her hair. The smile never reached my eyes. Back when I was starting my business and we were deeply in love, she remembered everything I said clearly, yet the words she once told me, that I would be the only person she ever loved, I wondered whether she still remembered. Well, it didn't matter anymore. "Sure," I said, "but you have to agree to one condition first." Willow's eyelashes trembled, casting a small shadow beneath her eyes. Her voice was low. "What condition?" "Go get a loyalty tattoo." I stared straight into her eyes, speaking slowly, each word deliberate. Willow's expression changed instantly. She instinctively shrank back. "No. I don't like tattoos. It's indecent." My voice remained calm, yet carried an undeniable pressure. "If you don't want to, that's fine. Then we'll break up." "Then I don't want the shares." Willow shook her head immediately, panic flooding her eyes as she tried to escape the topic. My expression darkened, and I raised my voice on purpose. "You weren't afraid of becoming a divorced woman for Makoto. How come when it comes to me, You won't even show a shred of loyalty. I grabbed her chin, forcing her to look at me. So everything you said about treating him as just a younger brother, was all of that a lie? You got the marriage license not because you pitied him. You had feelings for him yourself. Willow turned pale from being frightened by my anger, tears spilling instantly. No, George, please believe me, I really only pitied him. Then prove it. I released her chin, my tone cold and hard. By this time tomorrow, I want to see that tattoo. Otherwise, we're completely done. Even if you get it, we're done anyway. I added that silently in my mind. Chapter 8. The next evening, Willow showed up as expected. She wore a high-neck sweater, her face pale as paper. When she saw me, she avoided my eyes, unable to lift her head. I stepped closer and gently pulled up her sweater at the lower abdomen. There it was, the succubus-style tattoo I demanded. The lines were still faintly reddened from not being fully healed. Do you know what this represents? I pointed at the tattoo, my tone terrifyingly calm. Willow bit her lip, saying nothing, her shoulders trembling slightly. It represents loyalty, I answered for her. Before she could react, I pulled out my phone and opened an album I had prepared long ago, holding it out to her. But did you fulfill it? On the screen were intimate photos and videos of her and Makoto from the past year, holding hands on the roller coaster at an amusement park, feeding each other in a restaurant, kissing under the streetlight after a movie. Every image was crystal clear, sharp enough to cut, grinding her so-called loyalty into dust. Willow's face turned deathly pale, tears falling in heavy drops. We're breaking up. I bent down, picked up my phone, and spoke without a trace of emotion. No, George, please believe me, I really didn't cheat. These are all misunderstandings. Realizing what was happening, Willow lunged forward like someone losing her mind, reaching toward my hand. But just as she approached, a slender yet firm figure stepped in front of me. It was my newly hired secretary, dressed in sharp professional attire. Her tone was polite yet distant. Miss Liu, please do not harass my boss. Chapter 9. On the way back to my parents' place, watching the scenery roll backward outside the window, I couldn't help sighing a little. Don't get me wrong, I'm not some lonely guy who gets sentimental after a breakup. What I was sighing about was the pile of ridiculous misfortunes I'd endured this past year. Ever since Makoto showed up, it was like I'd been cursed with bad luck, absurdly bad luck. Every time I planned to break up with Willow, something happened to me immediately. I could be walking on the flat office floor and still manage to break my leg. A flower pot fell from the sky and hit me on the head. Even a casual walk on the roadside could end with a random unleashed dog chasing me down to bite me. The irony. Every time I ended up in the hospital, Willow would vanish like she'd evaporated from the world. No calls answered, no messages replied. But turning around, I'd see her all over Makoto's social media updates. She'd be sitting beside Makoto's hospital bed, caring for him tenderly. And the funniest part, we were hospitalized in the same hospital. I was in a VIP private room. He was packed in a standard ward. The whole situation felt exactly like one of those absurd female-targeted romance tropes. Whenever the heroine is coveted by another guy, the male lead must suffer a round of calamities first. Once I understood this, I stopped complaining. Since I couldn't break up for the moment, then this scumbag couple could enjoy my wrath. With one decisive move, I directly acquired the entire hospital. As expected, once we investigated, Makoto's little trick was exposed. He'd bribed a doctor to forge a fake terminal illness diagnosis. I didn't expose him. Instead, I found the doctor who'd accepted the bribe and told him to make up for his mistake. Every glucose drip Makoto received was replaced with estrogen. After more than half a year and over 100 bags of estrogen, I truly had no idea what that boy looked like now. After that, I hired a private investigator to collect evidence of Willow's affair. Just in case, my current company headquarters. Ironically, that building used to belong to a corporation that went bankrupt after being exposed in a scandal called the CEO's Lookalike Fantasy Fetish. I bought it for a bargain price. After I was discharged from the hospital, I began setting aside time to learn martial arts. My cheat-like golden ability for mastering anything quickly was still in full effect. In just a little over half a year, I've evolved from George the overbearing CEO into George the Grandmaster of Primordial Tai Chi. I can't intercept missiles, but dodging bullets, that I can do. And this is exactly the confidence I rely on to break up with Willow now, and even to later face the ultimate divine weapon known as the mistress-slaying blade. Chapter 10. When I got back to my parents' house, I hadn't even changed my shoes before hearing my mom's voice. George, look who's here. I looked up and instantly froze. A girl was sitting on the living room sofa, wearing a simple cream-colored dress. Her long hair was loosely tied behind her head, revealing her slender neck. Her skin was fair and luminous, and her features were as delicately sculpted as polished jade. After all these years, this was the first girl I had ever seen who looked better than Willow. I looked at her, then at my mom who had leaned close, my mind full of question marks. Who is this? I searched through 28 years of memories but couldn't recall knowing such a stunning beauty. This is Freya. Freya. My mom smiled so happily that her eyes wrinkled. Child, don't tell me you can't even recognize your little sister Freya. Freya. The name was like a key, instantly unlocking a flood of memories. I looked at her carefully and finally recognized traces of the girl she used to be, hidden beneath that striking face. Wasn't she the little troublemaking tyrant who used to wipe her nose on my shirt, steal my snacks, ride on my back like a horse, and chase me around shouting, "Big Brother George"? When we were in middle school, her father's company expanded overseas, so the whole family moved abroad. The day she left, Freya clung to my arm crying as if her heart were breaking, insisting on stuffing me into her family's suitcase to take me with her. Looking at the smiling Freya in front of me, 3 big words popped into my mind. The fallback night. No, wrong. The devoted second female lead. Another classic mechanism in a female-centric story world. After the male lead is hurt by a scumbag woman, a perfect, long-time secret admirer always appears to help him slap the ex and heal his wounds. Keeping my expression neutral, my gaze slowly traveled over her figure and finally landed on her chest. I muttered to myself, "Quite the transformation. No wonder I didn't recognize you." Freya's cheeks flushed slightly. She softly called out, "Big Brother George, long time no see." At dinner, my mom served a steaming dish of braised pork, and once she started talking, she couldn't stop. "Son, look how amazing Freya is now. Not only is she beautiful, she's taken over her father's company and is already a CEO of an international group at her age. 100 times better than that Willow girl. Mom, Willow and I already broke up." I cut her off lightly as I put a piece of meat into my mouth. My mom used to like Willow a lot, always bragging to others about her well-mannered future daughter-in-law. But ever since I casually started dropping hints about Willow and Makoto's messy entanglements, she completely defected and began urging me daily to break up. My mom's chatter halted abruptly. Then she burst into laughter. Good. Breaking up is the best thing you've done." After that, she didn't say more. As long as her son wasn't getting cheated on, she didn't care whom I chose to marry. Chapter 11. After dinner, my mom tactfully disappeared. That left Freya and me chatting in the living room. Both of us had spent years navigating the business world. We went from laughing about childhood embarrassments to discussing our respective work experiences, getting along surprisingly well. Before we knew it, it was already late into the night. A few days later, Freya arrived at my company as the representative of her multinational corporation, bringing a collaboration proposal. In the meeting room, she wore a perfectly tailored black suit, explaining the cooperation details with clarity and confidence. Every gesture radiated the poised sharpness of a corporate powerhouse, a stark contrast to the gentle girl she'd been at my home. The negotiation went extremely smoothly. After sending off her team, only the 2 of us remained in the office. Freya paused while gathering her documents. Suddenly, she looked up at me. "George, do you still remember what I told you the day I left?" Leaning back in my chair, I curved my lips into a smile. "Of course I remember. You clung to my arm crying, saying that when you came back, you would marry me." Freya's cheeks flushed instantly. I stood and walked over to her, my gaze drifting to her full red lips. Then I boldly slid an arm around her waist, pulling her slightly toward me. "So, did you come back this time to fulfill that promise?" Her whole body stiffened like a startled little cat. Over 10 seconds passed before Freya gave a tiny nod, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes." "Then show me your sincerity." I leaned down, my face so close that our noses were almost touching. "Not here." Freya's body tensed even more. Her eyes darted nervously toward the office door. "This is the company. What if someone comes in?" Chapter 12. This is the sincerity you were talking about. Freya looked completely stunned after I brought her to the hospital, staring at the sign that said, "Premarital Medical Examination." "What else?" I raised an eyebrow, my tone utterly matter-of-fact. "If a woman wants to marry me, the greatest sincerity she can show is a clean medical report and a prenuptial agreement. You said I'm the only person you've ever loved in your whole life. Surely you won't refuse something this small, right? 10+ years without contact. Returns home claiming she has always loved me. Does she think I'm an idiot? Plane tickets aren't exactly unaffordable. If she truly had deep feelings, how did she manage to send 0 messages all these years?" In my eyes, so-called devoted second female leads only appear devoted because the male lead is pathetic but rich. Who wouldn't love a compliant money-printing machine? Even if I'm the male lead in this world, I'd still rather believe Freya chose me because I'm successful, not because of some fairy tale love. In this female-centric world, purity works like a replaceable add-on module. Restoring it is as easy as updating a plugin. Who knows what kind of life she lived abroad? If it weren't for the fact that her face is even more stunning than Willow's, and that childhood ties make it inconvenient to treat her like a scumbag would. I wouldn't bother with all this effort. Freya's face went from pale to flushed to pale again, her fingers trembling slightly. After several minutes of silence, she finally lifted her head and gritted her teeth. I'll do it. When the medical report came out, I brought the prenuptial agreement I had drafted. The terms were fair. Freya only asked to add one clause. If either party cheats during the marriage, the other has the right to file for divorce. And the cheating party must give up 30% of their assets as compensation. I had absolute confidence in this clause. After all, I used to be the pinnacle of pure romance. When the marriage certificates were handed over, Freya was still in a daze. Her father had been pressuring her to get married, and she didn't want an arranged marriage. A play-your-own-game marriage disgusted her. Who knew what the other party might bring back with them? So she thought of her childhood neighbor George, and figured if he hadn't grown crooked, he'd be a decent choice. As for feelings fading after so many years, not a big deal. At least she didn't dislike him. She even had a bit of fondness. Love could be cultivated, but before she even got to experience sweet romance, somehow she ended up signing a prenup and getting a marriage certificate. She stared blankly at the photo on the red booklet, muttering, "We're just married like this." I leaned down and kissed the corner of her lips, amused. "Yup, my dearest Freya, but what about sweet romance?" She finally reacted, puffing her cheeks angrily. "I haven't even experienced the proper process. Dating, flowers, movies. We can do love after marriage. Ceremonies can always be made up later." I ruffled her hair. Freya took a deep breath. Suddenly, her eyes sharpened. She rolled up her sleeves and lunged at me. "George, I'm warning you, if you dare flirt around outside, I'll beat you to death." She launched straight into a grappling move, but halfway through her motion, I caught her wrist and gently pressed her against the wall. Realizing she couldn't win, Freya's eyes reddened with frustration. She opened her mouth and bit down on my shoulder. It wasn't until she tasted blood that she jolted back, staring anxiously at my shoulder. "Does it hurt?" I gave her a roguish smirk. "I'm fine, but you are about to suffer." Chapter 13. Switching scenes. Makoto was having a miserable time. "It's all because of you. All because of you. Now George doesn't believe me at all. Give me back my love." Willow hugged a pillow, pouncing toward the bed like a crazed cat, smacking Makoto over and over. The pillow itself was soft and harmless, but the loud thumping noises and her hysterical screaming made Makoto's head feel like it was exploding. At first, Makoto still tried to endure it, suppressing his anger as he coaxed her. "Willow, calm down. It's all because George is too narrow-minded. This has nothing to do with me." But Willow didn't listen at all. Ever since George blocked her, it felt like she'd been shut out of an entirely different world. George's company went public and he basked in the spotlight, while she couldn't even see him once. Those security guards and receptionists who used to treat her with polite smiles, now looked at her like she was no different from a passerby on the street. They didn't give her face at all. She had thought about using public opinion to force George to show up, but the moment she remembered the intimate photos of her and Makoto in George's hands, she backed down instantly. So now, all that rage had nowhere to go except onto Makoto. 10 minutes later, Willow felt the pillow wasn't enough. She threw it aside and extended her nails toward Makoto's face. Several red scratches instantly appeared on his already pale skin, stinging sharply. Even a clay statue has temper, let alone Makoto, who was never a decent person to begin with. The mask in his eyes tore completely. He suddenly grabbed Willow's wrist, and with a bit of force, pinned her beneath him. His voice turned vicious. "That's enough, Willow. Don't forget, you are my legal wife now." Willow trembled all over from his ferocious gaze, fear filling her eyes. "Makoto, what are you doing? Let me go." Makoto grinned, the expression twisted and chilling. "What do you think? As husband and wife, naturally we should do what married couples do. You beast, let go of me." Only then did Willow realize his intention. She struggled frantically, flailing her arms and legs to push him away, but the strength difference between men and women was too great. Her resistance was like tickling him. Makoto, impatient, grabbed a rope and swiftly tied her hands and feet to the bed frame. Willow cried until her voice nearly broke, but Makoto didn't care at all. His hands went straight for her clothes. "Stop pretending to be pure. You didn't stick with George because he was too busy to spoil you. You stuck with me because I sweet-talked you and made you feel good. That's why you were glued to me every day. Everything except the final step. We've already done it all. And now you want to pretend to be a virtuous woman." He let out a mocking laugh, full of contempt. "You bastard. I only stuck with you because I pitied you for having a terminal illness." Willow trembled with fury. Her tears mixed with hatred as they splattered onto the bedsheet. "Heh." Makoto couldn't be bothered to argue with her anymore. He leaned down toward her, but strangely, no matter how hard he tried, his body didn't react at all. Not even the slightest hint of desire. Seconds passed. Minutes passed. More than half an hour went by. Makoto's expression shifted from viciousness to panic. and finally turned a dark, purplish shade like rotten liver. At first, Willow was too terrified to breathe, but seeing his situation, her tightly wounded nerves suddenly relaxed, and then a surge of malicious delight exploded in her chest. "Makoto," she laughed cruelly, her voice dripping with disdain. "So you're not a real man after all?" "Shut up." Makoto reacted like a kicked dog. His hand swung out violently, landing a loud slap across Willow's face. Splitting her lip, he glared at her, eyes full of rage, then stormed out, slamming the door behind him. His retreating figure was both frantic and humiliating. Makoto rushed straight to the hospital and demanded an emergency full-body examination. When the doctor returned with the results, stumbling over his words as he informed Makoto that he would never again experience normal functionality, Makoto froze as if struck by lightning and collapsed into a chair. Suddenly, he remembered all the terminal illness medications he had been taking for over half a year. That doctor he bribed had no reason to harm him. Thinking it over, there was only one person who had both the motive and the ability to do something like this. George. It was George behind this. He ruined him. That shameless, despicable bastard. Makoto's eyes turned blood red in an instant, veins bursting in his gaze. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands and placed an online order. A sharp fruit knife. He was going to find George and take him down with him. Chapter 14. A few days later, I had just walked out of the company building, my bodyguards following at my side. Suddenly, a figure burst out of a nearby alley, charging at me with a hysterical scream. "George, go to hell." My bodyguard beside me froze on the spot like he'd been hit with a paralysis spell, not moving an inch. The glinting blade of the knife shone sharply under the sunlight. I didn't have time to think. My body reacted faster than my mind. Tai Chi 5-strike combo. The first strike landed precisely on Makoto's wrist. His fruit knife flew out of his hand with a loud clang, skidding far across the ground. The second and third strikes followed immediately, targeting his vital points with deadly accuracy. The final whip-like strike carried full force through my arm, sending Makoto's entire body flying backward before crashing heavily onto the pavement. He curled up, groaning in pain. Makoto tried struggling to get up, but I stepped forward and pinned his wrist under my foot. "Have you not heard? Heroes in this world are as countless as fish crossing the river. You have far underestimated mankind." Makoto's eyes bulged with rage, his voice hoarse and violent. "George, you despicable coward. You took my love away." I didn't bother replying. Instead, I shot a cold glare at my bodyguard. Only then did the men finally react, scrambling over in panic and pressing Makoto to the ground. I glanced at the bodyguard's awkward, apologetic smile, and an idea formed in my mind. I'd send him to follow my 3 generals from now on. The 4 of them together could at least make up a decent mahjong table. So he wouldn't be a complete waste. Afterward, Makoto was taken away by the police for attempted murder, and was ultimately sentenced to 10 years in prison. Meanwhile, Willow's parents couldn't reach her for several days. Anxious and desperate, they reported her missing. Eventually, she was found in Makoto's home, already unconscious from hunger. After she was rushed to the hospital, her parents came to my company building, screaming for me to come see Willow. Sitting in my office, listening to my assistant's report, I instructed calmly, "I want some peace and quiet." Kevin understood instantly and left to handle the situation. From that day on, I never saw Willow or her family again, nor did I ever hear any news about them. Chapter 15. Half a year later, Freya and I held our wedding in the most luxurious hotel in the city. A red carpet stretched from the hotel entrance all the way to the center of the banquet hall. Fresh white roses and champagne-colored hydrangeas lined both sides. Wearing a perfectly tailored suit, I stood at the end of the red carpet, watching as Freya slowly walked toward me, her hand resting on her father's arm. She wore a trailing wedding gown, her veil fluttering lightly. Outside the hotel doors, Willow clutched the hem of her clothes tightly, her hands unconsciously rubbing over her lower abdomen again and again. Back when she was rescued from Makoto's home and woke up in the hospital, a group of fierce-looking debt collectors had burst in searching for her. It was then that she finally saw Makoto's true face clearly. Makoto had fallen into gambling, lost everything, and accumulated enormous loan shark debt. After learning she had a boyfriend who was a successful entrepreneur, he deliberately approached her, using terminal illness and deep love as bait to trick her into getting a marriage license, just so she would help him pay off his debts. The truth hit like a bucket of ice water. Willow regretted everything to the core. She hated Makoto for scheming against her, but hated herself even more for being foolish, for falling for his sweet words. She kept comforting herself. At least she hadn't crossed the final line with Makoto. As long as George's anger faded and he was willing to see her, she could explain, she could make it right. She would even be willing to become his mistress if that was what it took. Besides, she carried George's mark on her body. Getting rid of it would leave a scar. And finding a man even 1% comparable to George, impossible. But reality kept slapping her in the face. She went to George's company countless times. Every time she got near the entrance, security guards stopped her cold. And then last month, she saw a classmate's social media post. George and Freya's wedding photos. It felt like lightning splitting her world apart. She couldn't believe that in less than a year, the man who had once tolerated her endlessly, had truly, completely let her go. Today, carrying the very last shred of hope, she came to the wedding. She was ready to burn all bridges. She wanted to rush inside, tell George she knew she was wrong, tell everyone she was still waiting for him. But before she even got close to the hotel entrance, two familiar figures strode up quickly, her parents. Each grabbed one of her arms. "Dad, Mom, let go of me." Willow struggled, her voice cracking with sobs. "I need to see George. I have something to tell him." Willow's father's face was dark with fury, his grip tightening as he shouted, half angry, half heartbroken. "See him. Our entire family is on the brink of bankruptcy because of you. How long are you going to keep this nonsense up?" Her mother wiped tears continuously, her voice choked. "Willow, please wake up. Makoto lied to you. You broke George's heart. And to clean up the mess Makoto left behind, our family has bled itself dry. If you provoke George again, our family will be completely ruined." After Makoto went to prison, his father disappeared, his mother committed suicide, with no other targets. The debt collectors turned to the legal wife, Willow Liu. At first, the Liu family insisted Makoto had deceived their daughter and that the debts were incurred before marriage, refusing to pay, but the collectors came banging on their door every few days, making life unbearable. In the end, they had no choice but to sell off assets to fill Makoto's financial pit, just to force a divorce. A once comfortable family was now on the verge of collapse. Willow's parents dragged her away from the hotel entrance, her cries scattering in the wind, fading into the distance. Years later, after being released, Makoto could no longer find his parents, nor Willow. After asking around, he heard that Willow had gone abroad and married someone else. So, gambling on one last chance, he scraped together a sum of money and left the country as well, never to return.